गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जय। नित्यल्लभविष्टम विष्णुपाद रशत रशत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्यल्लभविष्टम विष्णुपाद रशत रशत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्यल्लभविष्टम विष्णुपाद रशत रशत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मार भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गौरक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्यल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपा नुगुगरिया गुरु वार्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पददास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम अक्षय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। 11th Canto की जय। 12th Canto की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। हरि बोल everybody. रसेश्वरी माता जी, सत्य माता जी, Champak Didi, Gargaraj ji, Hare Krishna, Dandavat pranams to all of you. Hari Bol, everybody. So, actually, let's do the Mangalacharan, and then we'll read a summary of the 11th and 12th cantos. Okay, where is it? Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. नमो ओम विष्णु पदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्री श्रीमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायणिति नामिने। नमो ओम विष्णु पदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठा भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। गुरवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतं। नष्टप्रयेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये Kripa Mai Tvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hari Bol, Kishore Prabhu. Oh, I don't know what the meter for this is, the verse that you just sent, because it's all stuck together. Let's see. Nilambo di tate sada swaviraha kshipanvitan pandavang Srimad Bhagavati katta madirais na sanjivan patti. Ya Srimad Bhagavatam sada sva nayanashru payanai pujayan gosami pravaro gadadhar vibhu bhuyat mar ekagati. What's the translation for that? Hare Krishna Sudevi Didi and Haribo Madhavi Didi Dandavat Pranam. So right now I am at the Bhaktivedanta Research Center, and I think I've already mentioned this to you guys before, but yeah, yesterday I got Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's notebook that he wrote all his main kirtans. It first started off like when he was working out the songs. It wasn't just like him writing down the final draft of the songs, but it was like every now and then you'd see a line and then he'd cross out the line and rewrite it. This is when he was actually coming up with the words of all the songs. And so there are songs that he wrote for each verse of Shikshashtakam, then songs that he wrote for the verses of Radhashtakam. Like he wrote 8 songs about Srimati Radhika. One is Radhika Charana Parma, Ramani Shiromani, Varaja Vipine Shatakoti Gopi, Rasika Nagari, Mahabhava Chintamani, Radha Bhajani Jadi. So all those songs. Then there's the songs that he wrote for Namashtak. So there's a song, Shri Rupa Vadani, Shri Sachi Kumar. The ones that we're all familiar with is Jai Jai Harinam Chirananda Mritadam, and Harinamatua Aneka Sarupa, and Narad Muni Bhajai Vina. And then what came after that in the book? I'm just trying to remember. Then there's all the Sharanagati songs. So all the Sharanagati songs. And then the Arati songs. So like Jaya Jaya Gora Chandar Arati Ko Shobha Janavi Tatavani Jagamana Loba. That song actually began with Dakine Nitai Chand Vame Gadadhar. And then the verse that we now sing, Jaya Jaya Gora Chandar, you can see it, and they're written in very small letters, squished in at the top. So that came as an afterthought, the first verse. And anyway, so there's all the Arti songs, Bhog Arti. Then at the very ends of the book, then there's the Prasad Seva songs. I think is 6 songs, I think, yeah. So Sharira Vijadal, then there's the Shak Sang, then there's Bhaire Ekadina Nila Chai, that's about Jagannath Kichari, then there's Ramakrishna Gocharane, and there's Sachira Angani Kabu. That actually is a third song, Sachira Angani Kabu, Madhavan Puri Papu. Anyway, so there's all those songs, and then finally at the end of the notebook was Baul Sangeet. Somewhere in there was Yashamati Nandana also. I don't know what section it fit in though. I actually couldn't find Yashamati Nandana, but it was in there because the devotee told me it was. But anyways, so you could see all those songs handwritten. It was the most exciting thing ever. Holding those songs, like, oh God, I can't explain how exciting it is. But anyways, if you ever come to Kolkata, I highly recommend you come here to the Bhaktivedanta Research Center. There's so many other amazing things. That was the highlight for me, was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songbook. But then there's also his Swaniyam Dashakam that he wrote by hand, and so many things. Kishore just shared this. And could you tell me where this verse is from? Oh, this is Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. Okay, let's read it. Okay, so on the sands of the blue ocean in Puri, feeling deep separation from himself, Krishna feeling deep separation from himself, Mahaprabhu was consoled by his friend Gadadhar, Radharani. This is Srila Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, by the way. As one nears death, suffering the loss of a beloved, Gadadhar tries to, I don't know this word, resuscitate. Gadadhar tries to resuscitate Mahaprabhu by supplying the intoxicating wine of Krishna Katha to drown in the agony of separation plaguing his heart. As Gadadhar sings the songs of the Bhāgavata, tears cascade from his eyes like a shower of flower offerings. Wow. Tears cascade from his eyes like a shower of flower offerings, washing the words from its pages. My only goal is to enter that current of devotion flowing from the divine heart of that best of Goswamis, Gadadhar. Wow, what an incredible verse. Thank you so much, Kishore. Where is that from? Like, is that from the Gaurāṅga, what is it called? The Gaurāṅga Lila Smaran Mangala Stotram or something? Mangala Smaran Stotram? That's such a beautiful verse. So, all right. So now we're going to be not today, tomorrow, we'll be beginning the 12th canto. But before we start the 12th canto, I thought it'd be nice to get the flow of what's from the 11th canto into the 12th canto. So I'm reading from this book called Bhāgavata Pravāha, which means the flow of the Bhāgavats, to help us understand the storyline and how it all, and it's written by a devotee named Gaurāṅga Darśana Prabhu, I think. Yeah, he's a disciple of Radhanath Maharaj. So I'm not going to read the full summary of the 11th canto. I'll skip the most important part, Uddhav Geet. I'll just go through the main books because there isn't enough time. So Canto 11. The 11th canto corresponds to the forehead of Lord Krishna and predominantly describes the topic of mukti or liberation. This canto mainly deals with the subject of the disappearance of Lord Krishna and the enigmatic destruction of his Yadu dynasty orchestrated by the Lord through the curse of the sages. It contains the highly philosophical conversation between King Nimi and the Nava-Yogendras. This canto also presents the longest philosophical episode of the entire Bhagavatam, namely the Uddhav Gita, that Lord Krishna spoke to his dearest associate Uddhav just before his departure from this world. These topics enlighten us on deeper truths of this universe, various spiritual paths, and the supreme path of ultimate perfection, Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so now we're beginning the summary. Once the sages including Vishvamitra, Durvasa, Kashyapa, Angira, Vashishta, Narad, and others went to a holy place called Pindaraka after performing a ritual at Vasudev's house. Krishna's desire. In a playful mood, the young boys of the Yadu family dressed Krishna's son Samba as a pregnant woman and inquired from the sages about the fruit of Samba's fictitious pregnancy. Feeling disrespected, the sages cursed the mocking boys. They said, "You fools, she will give birth to a club that will destroy your dynasty." Shocked, the boys immediately lifted the garment from Samba's abdomen and, to their astonishment, found a club. The boys were terrified and hastily brought the club to King Ugrasen and narrated everything. On the regretful king's order, it was ground to powder and thrown into the ocean. But as Providence would have it, the waves carried all the bits of powdered club back to the shore, where they were absorbed and fructified into tall canes. A hunter named Jara found a small lump of that iron club from the belly of a fish and fashioned it into an arrowhead. These iron canes and the hunter's arrow would ultimately be the means for the annihilation of the Yadus. The all-knowing Lord Krishna, although capable of reversing the Brahman's curse, did not do so. Rather, in his formless time, he sanctioned all these events. The reasons why Krishna departed along with the Yadus are elaborated later. The 9 glorious questions. Understanding the curse of the Yadu dynasty and the imminent disappearance of Krishna, Vasudeva became anxious. He approached Narad Muni for enlightenment. Narad instructed him by narrating a conversation between King Nimi and the Navayogendras, the 9 great devotee sons of Lord Rishabdev. Their names were Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, Prabudha, Pipalayan, Avirhotra, Drumila, Chamasa, and Karabhajana. Once, during their travels, the Navayogendras had come to see the sacrifice of Nimi. Nimi had asked them 9 glorious questions, each one of which was answered by one of the 9 great sages. King Nimi asked his first question, "Please tell me what is the supreme good for the entire humanity?" Then Sri Kavi answered, "Fear comes from misidentification with matter, but if one worships the Supreme Lord Narayan and performs bhakti by one's body, mind, and senses, one will become fully fearless in this world." Then Nimi's second question was, "What are the qualities and behavior of a devotee?" Sri Havi answered, "There are 3 types of devotees, the Uttam Adhikari, the Madhyam Adhikari, and the Kanishta Adhikari. The Uttam Adhikari, he is the very advanced devotee. He sees Lord Krishna within everything and sees everything in relation with Krishna. And he doesn't discriminate. But the Madhyam Adhikari does discriminate. He's able to, so he's the intermediate devotee. He offers love to the Lord. He makes friendship with other devotees. He shows mercy to the innocent and disregards the envious." And then there's the Kanishta Adhikari, who, the neophyte devotee who faithfully worships the deity but doesn't behave properly with the devotees. Just saying. Okay, thanks for sharing that, Kishore. That was from, was going to write a book about the Bhāgavata, but he couldn't finish it. This was the Mangala Charan. I can find him. Find him. Okay, cool. Yeah, send me the link if possible. That would be. So then, Nimi's third question: "Please describe Maya, or the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu that bewilders even great mystics." Then Sri Antariksha answered, "To facilitate the independent enjoying propensity of wayward souls, the Lord creates samsara, or this material existence, by his illusory external energy, Maya. Though constitutionally eternal, all-knowledgeable, and ever blissful, the materially embodied soul engages in gratifying material senses, identifying oneself to be the material body. Thus, the spirit soul gets entangled in Maya, or illusion. Despite experiencing the dualities of material existence like happiness and distress, birth and death in samsara, the soul still continues wandering in it, looking for permanent happiness and eternal existence. Materialistic sojourn is in fact fueled by the illusion soul's materialistic desires and activities for the allurements of Maya. Ultimately, the Lord in his form of eternal time withdraws the entire cosmos at the end of the life of Brahma." So that was the answer to Nimi's third question, "Please describe Maya." Now, Nimi asks his fourth question. "How can a foolish materialist become disassociated from Maya?" Then Sri Prabhupada answered, "For real happiness, one has to approach an authorized guru who has realized the conclusion of all the scriptures and has taken shelter of the Supreme Lord, leaving aside all material considerations. A disciple should accept such a guru as one's life and soul and serve him without duplicity, with full sense control. A disciple has to practice cleanliness, austerity, tolerance, simplicity, nonviolence, and equanimity, and do everything for the Lord's pleasure. Such a devotee must cultivate friendships with other devotees by discussing the glories of the Lord and their association. Thus, by complete devotion to Lord Narayan, a devotee develops love for him and can easily cross the otherwise insurmountable Maya." Then Nimi asks his fifth question. "Please describe the transcendental position of Narayan." Then Sage Pipalayan answers, "There are 3 features of the absolute truth: Brahman, that pervades all states. Then there's Paramatma, that enters the hearts of all jivas, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Person." And Nimi asks his sixth question. "Please describe Karma Yoga, by which one can attain the transcendental platform." Then Avihotra answers, "Foolish people are attracted to fruit of activity activities, although the outcome is to become free from them and the resultant karma. If one does not have his senses under control, one will be caught up in samsara. However, by nishkam karma yoga, or by performing one's prescribed duties with detachment, one will become free from bondage. One must approach a guru and worship the Lord's deity to quickly attain from samsara. Then Nimi asks his seventh question. What are the various pastimes of the Lord's incarnations? Then Sri Durmila answers, one may count all the atomic particles on the earth, but one cannot count all the qualities of the Supreme Lord. He incarnates as the Purusha avatars and Guna avatars for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of this universe. And to perform various pastimes, the Lord appears in his Leela avatars, including Narayan, Hamsa, Dattatreya, Rishabha, Hayagriva, Nrsimha, Ram, Parshuram, and so on. While narrating the pastimes of the sages, Narayana, Durmila said, when sages Narayana were performing austerities, Indra became afraid of losing his post and sent Cupid to distract them. Cupid, however, was humbled by Narayana, who received them with hospitality, and instead offered him the gift of a beautiful damsel named Urvashi. Then Nimi asks his eighth question. What is the destination of one who is devoid of bhakti? Then Chamasa answers, the non-devotees are of two types. Na bhajanti, those who do not worship the Lord out of ignorance, and avajananti, are those who intentionally disrespect the Lord out of arrogance. Innocent or ignorant people deserve the mercy of advanced devotees so that they can become devotees too. But the second category of people, they perform sinful acts, misinterpret scriptures, become addicted to sex life and meat eating, and this is due to their pride in wealth, power, high birth, education, beauty, and strength. Those who are addicted to these sins will have to enter hell and experience severe distress. The regulated concessions for sex, intoxication, and meat eating in Vedic literatures are only meant to gradually elevate people to higher consciousness. Now, Nimi asked the last question, the ninth question. What are the different yuga avatars of the Lord? What is the process of worshipping them? Then Sri Karabhajan describes the different yuga avatars of Satya, Treta, and Dwapar yugas, and how the Lord is adored by meditation, sacrifice, and worship in the respective ages. He further described how in Kali Yuga, intelligent persons perform Sankirtan, or chanting to worship the Lord's incarnation, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself, accompanied by his various associates. Great people appreciate Kali Yuga, in which perfection can easily be obtained simply by performing Sankirtan. Thus, even the inhabitants of Satya Yuga desire to take birth in this age. Thus, having heard the science of Bhakti Yogendras, Nimi felt extremely satisfied and worshipped them. Fixed in the spiritual principles received, Nimi achieved the supreme goal. Having narrated this enlivening conversation of Nimi and the Navayogendras, Narad spoke to Vasudeva. Apply these principles of bhakti faithfully, and you will attain the Supreme Lord. You and your wife Devaki are pure and glorious, because the Supreme Lord has become your son and associated with you in various intimate ways. Do not think of Krishna as an ordinary human. He is the Supreme Lord, concealing his inconceivable opulence. He descended to punish the demoniac and protect the devoted. Hearing the teachings of Narad Muni, Vasudeva and Devaki gave up all illusion and became freed from anxiety. The last meeting. Thereafter, Lord Brahma and the other demigods came to Dwarka and offered their prayers to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, anticipating his imminent disappearance. Addressing Brahma, Lord Krishna disclosed that he would soon depart from this world after withdrawing the Yadu dynasty. Having already made the arrangements for that through the curse of the sages, understanding Krishna's plan, Uddhav Uddhav, the unalloyed devotee and dearest friend of Krishna, was overwhelmed with separation and anxiety. Uddhav approached Krishna with folded hands, pleading Krishna to take him along with him to his spiritual abode. During his manifest pastimes on the earth, Krishna had exchanges with several of his devotees at Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, Indraprastha, Hastinapur, Mithila, and so on. He had also graced the heavenly planets with his presence and gave darshan to Uditi and Kashyapa during the Parijata tree episode. He had visited the lower planets to retrieve Sandipani Muni's son and met Bali Maharaj and Yamaraj there. He even went to Vaikunta and met Mahavishnu and others, plea of retrieving the sons of a Brahman in Dwarka. One place where but even though Krishna had gone everywhere, all in the upper planetary systems, lower planetary systems, everywhere, but one place where Krishna hadn't personally visited during his earthly sojourn was Badarik Ashram, where the great sages Nar Narayan resided. With his departure due now, Krishna wanted Uddhav to go and enlighten the sages at Badarik Ashram on his behalf. Krishna considered Uddhav as good as his own self, and so he imparted confidential teachings called the Uddhav Gita to him. This Uddhav Gita forms the longest philosophical section of this magnum opus literature, Srimad Bhāgavatam. In it, Krishna spoke about bhakti, jnana, and vairagya to teach us through Uddhav. So I'm not going to read the whole Uddhav Gita here because I want to get through the summary of the Torah, but I'll just read through the topics that Krishna spoke about. Maybe I'll read this first section. Equal vision. So Krishna spoke to Uddhav. Dear Uddhav, my mission here is complete. As I depart, you too should not remain here, as the earth would be bereft of all piety in Kali Yuga with people addicted to sinful life. Give up all attachments, fix your mind on me, and see everything with an equal vision and renounced spirit. Hearing about the renounced spirit suggested by Krishna, Uddhav asked, How can I cultivate such a detached vision, since renunciation is very difficult for ordinary people who are attached to sense enjoyment? Then Krishna answered, An intelligent person can analyze the worldly situation by perception, common sense, and logic to rise above sense enjoyment. By inculcating certain principles and avoiding certain activities, one can search out and ultimately attain me, the Supreme Lord. Therein lies the glory of human life. King Yadu had once seen a young Avadut Brahmin, Lord Dattatreya, who appeared learned. He was wandering about fearlessly. Yadu learnt that the Brahmin had taken shelter of 24 gurus, including the plants, animals, birds, insects, and nature, along with the moving story of the prostitute Pingala. He had learnt the science of the self and developed detachment by carefully studying their activities. He studied their activities and qualities with his refined intelligence. Yadu worshipped him, and developing equal vision, became free from all material attachments. Having prescribed equal vision, and describes the qualities of a saintly person through the story of the Avadut Brahman, Krishna further outlines the practical means to achieve such a saintly position. Krishna said, Initially taking shelter of me through the scriptures, one must practice Varanashram. Work not for selfish sense enjoyment, but as a matter of duty, Nishkam Karma Yoga. By this, one gets some understanding of the true self. One must then approach a bona fide guru, a representative of God, with faith and affection, and be completely surrendered to him. One must be eager to receive knowledge of God from the guru. Such pure spiritual knowledge destroys illusion arising from the material modes. Then the nature of fruit of activity. Refuting the karma mimamsa theory, which states that attaining happiness by fruit of work is the ultimate goal of life, Krishna explained, Attached workers desire perpetual happiness, but they are unhappy too often and satisfied only occasionally. Thus, they prove that they are not independent, and their destinies are under some superior control. So the concept of becoming happy by expertly doing karma is only due to false independence and pride. Even if, by some means, people are able to avoid misery, still they cannot avoid death. Happiness, either on earth or in is always polluted by envy, decay, and death. Therefore, on the path of materialism, there is certainly no uninterrupted or natural happiness. Through pious acts, one achieves heaven, but after brief enjoyment there, one falls back to the mortal plane. Through impious acts, one can extract some short-term pleasure, but consequently suffer in hell and get an inauspicious earthly birth. Evidently, those devoted to material activities and rituals are perplexed and subjugated to lamentation, being bound one way or the other. Uddhava further asks the jiva's entanglement in Maya and the symptoms of conditioned souls and liberated souls. Krishna explains that bondage and liberation do not actually exist for the spirit soul, the soul who is a fragment of God. Vidya and avidya, knowledge and ignorance, his two energies, create liberation and bondage respectively. The jiva's relationship with the material nature arises only due to their ignorance. The conditioned soul identifies with the material body like a person who identifies with somebody in a dream. Thus, one undergoes various illusory experiences of temporary bodily enjoyment and distress. These are illusory and not factual, because the soul in its original state is ever blissful, as part of the whole. The liberated soul, therefore, although situated in the material body, doesn't identify with it. He remains detached from all worldly sense objects. He may seem to be engaging with them. That's appropriate renunciation, or yukta vairagya. Being fully awakened to one's spiritual identity as a servant of God, a liberated soul has no relation whatsoever with this material world. Krishna then described how to become liberated. Accept only those scriptures that describe my glories. Thus, fix your mind on me, and devotional service and association of my devotees, thus reaching the platform of ultimate liberation, my supreme abode. Other scriptures which deal with subject matters other than pure devotional service, teaching ways of pious and peaceful living, etc., factually open the doors to further entanglement only. Then the true bhakta and best bhakti. Hearing that one-pointed devotion leads one to Krishna's abode, Uddhava asked, "Whom do you consider to be a true devotee, and what are the aspects of devotional practice?" Krishna replied, "A true devotee has 28 qualities. He is merciful, forgiving, truthful, non-envious, undisturbed, self-controlled, peaceful, steady, accepts me as the only shelter, and so on." The practice of bhakti includes 64 kinds of activities: seeing, touching, worshipping, serving, glorifying, and offering obeisance to the deity and pure devotees, hearing and chanting about me, being on me, etc. Being their ultimate shelter, I remember such devotees who perform such bhakti. If one does not engage in bhakti, which arises usually by associating with my devotees, there is no means of escaping from material existence without bhakti. The power of devotee association. Describing the super excellence of devotee association, Krishna said, "By associating with my pure devotees, one can destroy one's attachment for all material sense gratification and attain perfection. Many people could attain me simply by associating with my pure devotees. Daityas, Rakshasas, birds, beasts, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Vaishyas, Sudras, and so on, they were all purified in devotee association. Some examples were Vritrasura, Prahlad, Bali, Vrishaparva, Bana, Maya, Vibhishana, Sugriva, Hanuman, Jambavan, Jendra, Jatayu, Tuladhara, Kubja, the gopis, and the wives of the brahmanas. These persons did not undergo serious Vedic studies, nor did they execute severe vows or austerities, but they simply associated with my devotees." Krishna then glorified the topmost of all his devotees, the gopis of Vrindavan. He said, "Attached to me with love, they felt extreme distress because of separation from me. When Akrura came to take myself and Balaram to when Akrura came to take myself and Balaram to Mathura. All those nights that they spent with me felt like a passing moment to them. But in my absence, the same night felt to them like a day of Brahma. Okay, I'm now, because it's getting late, it's 8:10 and we only have 20 minutes to read about the 12th canto, I'm just going to read the topics now. So then Krishna so far gave the gradual progression of the process of disentanglement as Varnashram, Nishkam Karma Yoga, surrendering to a bona fide guru, and then one pointed devotion to him. Seeing Uddhav undecided, Krishna advised conclusively, one should use the axe of knowledge cultivated under the guru and cut this tree-like universe made of Maya with its various flowers and fruits of material happiness and distress. Knowledge is awakened by the practice of the principles and the mode of goodness. By cultivating goodness, one can conquer the lower modes. Ultimately, one must give up the axe of knowledge. One must give up the axe of knowledge too, and become exclusively fixed in complete devotion to me. Then Uddhav asked about the role of yoga after hearing about knowledge. Yeah. And then Uddhav asked Krishna, sages recommend various processes based on the Vedas. Are all of them equally important, or is one of them supreme? And then Krishna explains about the practice of bhakti. And then Krishna explains Ashtanga Yoga, Siddhis, and the Vibhutis. Uddhav wanted to know about mystic perfections, not to practice it, but only to increase his appreciation for bhakti through comparison. So then Krishna explains about Ashtanga Yoga. Then Uddhav asks Krishna about Varnashram. And then, upon Uddhav's request, Lord Krishna prescribes the 12 types of disciplinary regulations, like non-violence, truthfulness, humility, etc. And also the 12 types of regular duties, like cleanliness, chanting, austerity, and visiting holy places. Then Uddhav asks Krishna, how can one not refer to good and bad, how can one, because Krishna then says that one should, after delineating many good and bad, Krishna ultimately concluded that to maintain a worldly vision of good and bad is itself detrimental, and one must therefore aim to transcend both good and evil. Then Uddhav asks, how can one not refer to good and bad, or piety and sin? The Vedas bring forth piety and sin, and contain various prohibitions and recommendations. Then Krishna replied, there are 3 paths for perfection, namely Jnana, Karma, and Bhakti. So it depends on our qualification, right? Bhakti is factually independent. Thus, for a devotee, knowledge and detachment are not a means to achieve the highest perfection. Everything that can be achieved by any other process is easily achieved by my devotee through bhakti unto me. But my unalloyed devotees desire nothing besides me. They do not accept even liberation if offered by me. Material piety and sin cannot exist within them. They attain freedom from illusion and attain my abode. Then Krishna then summarizes the progressive spiritual paths. And he says the path of spiritual evolution begins from Karma Yoga, progresses to Jnana Yoga, and culminates in Bhakti Yoga. Then Krishna explains, though consideration of piety and sin is also, in some cases, piety becomes sin, and sin becomes piety. Vedic knowledge is difficult to without me or my devotees. Then Krishna explains the material creation, goes through the 28 elements. It's a renunciation. Krishna explains about Vairagya, because Uddhav asks, how do materialistic people accept various bodies? Okay, so then Krishna explains liberation by its improvocation. One who desires the highest goal should use one's intelligence to keep oneself safe on the spiritual platform, even in difficult situations like being neglected, insulted, ridiculed, envied, or agitated by ignorant people. Then Krishna described the story of the tolerant Avanti Brahman who soberly met with the insults of people. Considering all insults to be the results of his own past deeds, he took shelter of the Lord. And the maturity of his realization, he sang a song called the Bhikshu Gita, which inspires detachment and devotion. Then transcending the modes of material nature by bhakti. And then good and bad association. Then described how in devotional service one should avoid bad association of sense gratifiers, and especially undue attachment to the opposite sex. Otherwise, one sinks into the deep pit of ignorance. And then he explains the story of King Pururava and the Aila Gita that he sang once he went to the planet of Urvashi. Then Krishna explains about deity worship and detachment by cutting the false ego. And then he explains at the very end, I'll read this section, the simplest path. Uddhava asked Krishna, kindly explain some simple method easy to execute for attaining supreme perfection. Because just before Krishna explains the path of Gyan, which is very difficult. So now he's explaining the most easy path towards attaining the supreme perfection. Krishna concluded with his final instructions on bhakti as follows. Krishna said, always remembering me, perform all duties for me with mind and intelligence offered to me. Take shelter of the holy places and be guided by the exemplary activities of my devotees. Holy days by devotional singing and dancing. With a pure heart, see me to be both unblemished by anything material and also present everywhere. One who sees me in all living entities and offers due respect to everyone is considered actually wise. Till then, one must continue to worship my deity with speech, mind, and body. I recommend bhakti to be the best possible method of spiritual enlightenment. Since I have personally established it, this process is transcendental, free from material motivations, and certainly there is no loss on this path. This process is of supreme intelligence and diligence, for by following it, one can life attain me. Hearing the elaborate teachings of Krishna that established the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga, Uddhava gratefully offered his prayers. Then Krishna instructed Uddhava to go to Badarikashram, assuring him that he will soon come back to him. Uddhava circumambulated, fell at his lotus feet, and drenched his feet with tears. Greatly pained by separation from Krishna, Uddhava honored Krishna's slippers by respectfully placing them upon his head, and then departed to Badarik Ashram. Haribol and Dira Mataji and Mohar, Hare Krishna. Okay, Mohar, you'll listen from the beginning afterwards. Okay, so the disappearance of the divine dynasty. Thereafter, observing many disturbances in Dwarka, Lord Krishna addressed the Yadus. Please see these terrible omens which appear like flags of death. We should not remain here even for a moment. Let us go to Prabhas Kshetra and perform rituals and worship the Brahmanas. Consenting, the Yadus crossed over the ocean on boats and then proceeded on chariots to Prabhas Kshetra. There they performed various rituals. By the will of Providence, they drank liquor, and in a delirious state, they started fighting amongst themselves violently. When all their weapons broke, they seized the tall canes on the seashore. In their confused state, mistaking Lord Balaram as their enemy, they ran towards him, intending to kill him. Krishna and Balaram also picked up the canes and began to kill the arrogant warriors. Thus, like a forest fire which engulfs itself, all the Yadus were destroyed. Balaram then fixed himself, and there's a footnote here. It says, it's a long footnote. Anyways, let's read it. Some deeper reasons for the ghastly disappearance of Krishna's family. Having fulfilled the purposes for which he descended, Krishna desired to wind up his pastimes before the advent of Kali Yuga. The curses of the sages in Gandhari and Jala's arrow were a part of his plan for ascending back to the spiritual world, departing from the material world. 2. Some Yadus, due to their intimate connection with Krishna, were behaving whimsically, and Krishna felt it necessary to annihilate those contemptuous members. 3. The Lord gave a grave message of detachment to the people of this world. All our opulence and power are temporary, and someday we will have to leave behind our possessions, including our life. Then 4. Krishna also demonstrated that he won't spare even his own family members if they offend the Brahmins and sages. And 5. The glorious Yadus are the Lord's eternal associates, and they would not be able to bear separation from Krishna after his distance. In their agitation, they would trample and destroy the earth. Therefore, Krishna orchestrated their disappearance prior to his own. And 6. Some of the Yadus were demigods who had descended to assist Lord Krishna in his mission per his order. Through this pastime, Krishna re-established them in the heavenly planets to resume their services of universal management as before. Okay, so thus all the Yadus were destroyed. Balaram then fixed himself in meditation and gave up this mortal world. Subsequently, Krishna also silently sat down under a peepala tree, exhibiting his effulgent four-armed form for the final pastime in this world. The hunter Jara, mistaking the Lord's foot for a deer's face, pierced the Lord's foot with his arrow, which he had fashioned from the last iron fragment from Samba's cursed club. Realizing his offense, Jara fell at the feet of the Lord, weeping in repentance. Krishna replied, "Dear Jara, do not fear, as all of this is because of my desire. You may now go to the spiritual world." The hunter circumambulated Krishna thrice, and receiving his causeless mercy, departed in a celestial airplane to the spiritual sky. At that time, Daruka, the chariot driver of Krishna, noticed the Lord. The Lord's chariot then rose up in the sky along with its horses and flag. All of the Lord's divine weapons also followed. Krishna then instructed Daruka, "Go to Dwarka and inform everyone about the destruction of the Yadus, the disappearance of Balaram, and my current situation. You and your relatives should not remain in Dwarka, which will soon be inundated by the ocean. Take your own families, together with my parents, and go to Indraprastha under Arjuna's protection. Be situated in devotion to me and remain peaceful." Daruka departed with a mourning heart. Lord Brahma then arrived at Prabhas Kshetra along with Shiva and other demigods to witness the departure of Lord Krishna. Crowding the sky with many airplanes, the demigods showered flowers with great devotion. Krishna then closed his lotus eyes, fixing his mind within himself. Without the need to burn his body by mystic meditation like the yogis, he simply entered the spiritual world in his own transcendental self-same body. As soon as Krishna left the earth, truth, religion, beauty, faith, and glory immediately left this world too and followed him. At Dwarka, Devaki, Rohini, and Vasudev were tormented by separation from their sons. They gave up their lives at that very spot, and the wives of the Yadavas gave up their lives, embracing their dead husbands on the funeral pyres. Arjuna felt great distress over separation from Lord Krishna, but consoled himself by remembering the transcendental words the Lord had sung to him in the Bhāgavata Gita. Being abandoned by the Lord, the ocean flooded Dwarka on all sides, sparing only his palace. Arjuna took the survivors of the Yadu dynasty to Indraprastha and installed Vajra as their ruler. The Pandavas established Parikshit as the ruler of Hastinapur and left to prepare for their own departure from this world. The Pandavas prepared for their own departure from this world. Now begins the 12th canto, but we only have like 6 minutes to read. So, Canto 12. 12th canto corresponds to the head of Lord Krishna and describes the topic of Nirodha, or destruction. There are 4 types of destruction, or pralay, namely Nitya pralay, or constant deterioration of material objects that happens at every moment; Then there's Naimatik Pralay, or the destruction of planets at the end of Brahma's day. Prakrita Pralay, or destruction of the universe at the end of Brahma's life. And Atyantika Pralay, or the final destruction of the conditioned soul's false ego that causes liberation. In front of the great cosmic destructions, the small losses we experience in material worlds, including death, are factually insignificant. This canto also presents the departure of Parikshit, and the qualities of another great devotee named Markandeya, and finally the glories of Srimad Bhāgavatam. So let's read a bit from this. Let me just check the comments. Okay, Indira Mataji, you haven't caught up yet, so you're just stopping by to say Hari Bol. You'll be able to join in about 3 to 4 days. Okay, great. Happy you'll be able to join soon again. Yeah, Indira Mataji's been hearing 6 to 8 hours of Srimad Bhāgavatam every single day, right? You've been hearing from Bhakti Swarup Sridhar Maharaj. He's doing a Bhagavat Saptaha. And there's 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, but sometimes that even gets elongated, like that goes on longer. Okay, so the 12th canto. Having described the pastimes of the Supreme Lord Krishna, Shukadev Goswami began to describe the degraded dynasties of Kali Yuga. He predicted the qualities and activities of their future kings of this planet. The kings of Kali Yuga will be barbarians in the guise of kings. They will murder the helpless, covet the wives and property of other men, be erratic in their moods, short-lived, characterless, and covered by passion and ignorance. The citizens will imitate the character, behavior, and speech of their rulers. Harassed by their leaders and by each other, they will suffer ruination. In the age of Kali, religion, duration of life, physical strength, and memory will all diminish. The principles of religion will be observed only for the sake of reputation. Position will depend only on mere external symbols. Sacred places will be considered as a reservoir of water located at a distance. The real goal of life will be just filling the belly. Wealth alone will be a sign of a man's good birth. Success in business will depend on deceit. One's scholarship will depend only on being clever at juggling words. Hypocrisy will be accepted as virtue and audacity as truthfulness. Beauty will depend on one's hairstyle, and men and women will live together based on such superficial attraction, and the goal of life will be filling the belly. Law and justice will be based on one's power. That's already something that happens now. Since the rulers will behave like thieves, the citizens will suffer. Harassed by famine and excessive, people will resort to eating objectionable things. Struck by drought, completely ruined, they will suffer from cold, wind, heat, rain, and snow. They will be tormented by quarrels, hunger, thirst, disease, and anxiety. The maximum duration of life will become 50 years. Towards the end of Kali Yuga, the bodies of everyone will be reduced in size, and all the social classes will be reduced to Shudras. Cows will be like goats. People will be like asses. Most plants and herbs will be tiny. Spiritual hermitages will be like mundane houses, and family ties will be no more than immediate bonds of marriage. At that time, Lord Vishnu will appear as Kalki in the village of Shambhala to a Brahmin named Vishnu Yasha. Riding on his horse Devadatta with a sword in hand, he will travel all over earth and will kill all the so-called kings. The death of the impostor kings at the end of Kali will be accompanied by fragrant spiritual breezes coming from the body of Lord Vasudeva that will make the minds of people transcendently pure. This will mark the beginning of the next Satya Yuga. Inspired by the Lord from within their hearts, the citizens will abundantly repopulate the earth. Devapi, the brother of King Shantanu from the Moon Dynasty, and Maru, the descendant of Ikshvaku from the Sun Dynasty, both possessing great mystic strength and still living in the village of Kalapa, will return and establish religion again. The Song of the Earth. Then, lamenting for the foolishness of the kings who were bent upon conquering her, Mother Earth had sung a song called the Bhumi Gita. She had sarcastically said, "Great kings who are actually just playthings of death, who could not even subdue their 6 internal enemies, and the five senses in the mind, those 6 internal enemies. They imagine that they will go on to conquer all of me and all my oceans. Seeing their false hopes, I can simply laugh, for eventually they all must leave this planet, as all the great kings of the past had to. Even after they manage to usurp some part of the earth, which is actually unconquerable and must be given up, their fathers, sons, brothers, friends, and relatives quarrel over it." Thereafter, at Parikshit's request, Sukadeva Goswami describes the qualities of different yugas. In the Satya Yuga, Dharma used to stand on 4 legs, and the people were self-satisfied, merciful, friendly, peaceful, sober, equipoised, tolerant, and endeavored diligently for spiritual perfection. In the Treta Yuga, each leg of Dharma was reduced by 1/4 by the influence of the 4 pillars of irreligion, that's lying, violence, dissatisfaction, and quarrel. The people were devoted to rituals and austerities, and not very violent or lusty. In Dwapara Yuga, the legs of Dharma were reduced to half, and people were interested in glory, devoted to Vedic study, and enjoying life. In Kali Yuga, only 1/4 of the religious principles remain, which will also decrease until destroyed completely. People are greedy, ill-behaved, merciless, fight without reason, unfortunate, obsessed with material desires, adapt to atheism, and are almost Shudras. Even if one utters the name of Krishna unconsciously, even on one's deathbed, being afraid, one can achieve the supreme destination by the Lord's unconditional grace. But still, the people of Kali Yuga will not worship the Supreme Lord. Then Shukadeva Goswami describes the 4 types of pralay, 4 types of destruction. There's naimitic pralay, prakritik pralay, atyantik pralay, then the departure of the devoted emperor. Let's read about the departure of the devoted emperor, which will only take a minute, and then we'll stop for today. Departure of the devoted emperor. By describing the 4 types of annihilation just before the death of Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami indicated to him that his death was so insignificant compared to the enormous destructions that happen in this world, both a cosmic and on both a cosmic and minute scale. Shukadeva then concluded, "Cultivation of taste for hearing the Lord's pastimes is the only boat to cross the material ocean. Give up the mentality that you are going to die. You are eternal, never to be destroyed. Constantly meditating on the Lord, consider how you are different from the body and non-different from the Supreme Lord in quality. No agent of death can truly touch you." Parikshit thanked Shukadeva. He said, "Hearing the most auspicious narrations of the personal features of Lord Hari from you, I have achieved the purpose of my life. Great souls like you are kind to the foolish conditioned souls. Being absorbed in the absolute truth, now I do not have any fear of death from takshak, or even of repeated deaths. Please give me permission to resign my speech, all my senses unto the Lord. Allow me to absorb my mind within Him, and thus give up my life." Being worshipped by the king and the sages, Shukadeva Goswami then departed from that place. Parikshit sat on the Darbha seat, meditating on the supreme absolute truth. His life air ceased to move, and he became as stationary as a tree. Takshak reached Parikshit after bribing Kashyapa not to protect Parikshit and disguising himself as a Brahmana. Being bit by him, the body of Parikshit immediately burnt to ashes. While everyone was astonished, a terrible cry echoed all over the universe. The Gandharvas and Apsaras sang, and the demigods showered flowers and spoke words of praise. Then Janamejaya, son of Parikshit, became extremely angry at his father's death by the snake bite. He resolved to perform a mighty sacrifice to offer all the snakes in the world into the sacrificial fire. He even dragged Indra towards the fire as he was protecting Indra was protecting Takshak. Seeing the plight of Indra, Brihaspati came and spoke to Janamejaya. This king of snakes has drunk the nectar of the immortal demigods and is thus not subject to old age and death. Please understand that life, death, and the afterlife are all caused by oneself through one's own activities. No other agent is actually responsible for creating one's happiness and distress. Please stop this sacrifice intended to harm others. Many innocent snakes have already been burned to death. Janamejaya humbly honored Brihaspati's words and stopped the sacrifice. Thereafter, I'm not going to read. Thereafter, at Shanak Rishi's request, Sutta Goswami described how the intelligent disciples of Srila Vyasadeva segregated and transmitted the Vedas. The transcendental sound vibration of Omkar first appeared in Brahma's heart. From that, all the sounds. With these sounds, he produced the composite Vedas and taught them to his sons, the sages, who further propagated them. The parampara of the Vedas continues in all the 4 yugas by oral reception. At the end of each Dwapar Yuga, the Vedas are segregated into separate divisions by eminent sages for ensuring the accessibility by the people of diminishing intelligence and lifespans. All right, so we'll read all about that, and then we'll hear about the Deya Puran. Shanak asked Sutta about the Markandeya Rishi who survived in the water of annihilation and saw the Supreme Lord on a banyan leaf. Sutta Goswami gladly narrates that story. And is that how Srimad Bhāgavatam ends? After the extraordinary experience, as Markandeya was absorbed in meditation, Lord Shiva. Okay. Then it ends with the glories of Srimad Bhāgavatam. Let's read about this, the glories of Srimad Bhāgavatam. I'll read this last section. And then we will continue on we'll start the 12th canto tomorrow. And the 12th is going to take very long because it's so short. So, let's see. Tomorrow we will read The Kings of Kali Yuga. And it's a short chapter. It's only 2,258 words. Wow. Maybe we could read 2 chapters tomorrow. Let's see. Because this next chapter is also short. Oh my God. Sometimes the evening session takes 5 hours. Oh my God. That's crazy. So you do 3 hours in the morning, then sometimes 5 hours in the evening. That's insane. All right, everybody. So I will end for now, and I'll see you all tomorrow. I'll be right now I'm at the Bhaktivedanta Research Center, but I'll be going to Bhaman Goswami Gaudiya Math tomorrow, and I'll probably stay there for a week or so, maybe longer, who knows. Hopefully my internet connection will work. If it doesn't, then I'll have to pre-record videos, which kind of sucks. But we'll see. I just got a different kind of SIM, so hopefully that will change things. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaur Hari Bol. Okay, so Indira Mataji, you're going to try to catch up before I'm done, so don't go too fast. Okay, so then maybe tomorrow we won't read 2 chapters. We'll just read 1 chapter, which is just 2,000 words, so it'll be a very short chapter. And then the next day, the next chapter is also 2,000 something words. So then you won't have a difficult time catching up. And then the day after that is Vakeshwar Pandit's, I think it's his, let me see. It's Vakeshwar Pandit's appearance day. So then we could read about Vakeshwar Pandit. So that will give you time to catch up. All right. Haribol, Satya Mataji. Okay, Kishore. Maybe you can send it to me personally somehow. All right, everybody. Jai Shishi Guru Gaurāṅga Gandharva Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju ki Jai. Jai, I'm going to do Jai Jai Shila Gurudev ki Jai, Shila Param Gurudev ki Jai, Shila Prabhupada ki Jai, Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki Jai, Saparshachi Gaur Nityanand Prabhu ki Jai, Shri Radhakrishna Gopa Gopigan ki Jai, Shri Giriraj Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhāgavatam ki Jai, 12th Canto, 11th Canto ki Jai, Shri Uddhav Gita ki Jai, Shri 12th Canto ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Anantakot Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Dandavat pranams everybody. Vrindai Tulsi Devai, Priyai Keshavashacha, Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi, Sattvatai Namo Namaha, Vancha Kaltarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow. Jai Shri Radhe. Okay, Kishore, I'll find it. I'll type in Shlashira Maharaj Gadadhar. I'll do that. Alright, Hari Bol everybody. Jai Shri Radhe. Hari Bol Indira Mataji.